Welcome to the Forever Better Academy podcast, where you will be given the principles, tools, and techniques to reach the next stage on your journey of self-mastery. Who could you become? I'm your host, Wade Vincent. What's good, master pupils? Thank you for joining me again today for another episode of the Forever Better Academy podcast. Now, when I say master pupils, I want to let everyone here know that I have a private Facebook group called Master Pupils, and that group is for anyone who's on that journey, that self-mastery, the quest to learn and grow and become the best version of yourself that you can become. So I want to let everyone know that group exists. So if you just jump onto Facebook and search for Master Pupils, feel free to get involved and join the group and be a part of it. So part of this community where we all share and learn our and offer things that can help each other grow, and just do it together, as they say. A rising tide lifts all ships. If you wanna go fast, you go alone. If you want to go far, you go together. So I want to let everyone know that just from the beginning. So please feel free, jump into that Master Pupils group and let's join our community. Now today, in this episode, we will be discussing the power of habit. So habit is one of the most important things that you have to take ownership of and really master for you to progress in your journey of self-mastery. So habit is one of those vital things that everything stems from that. So if you really dive into what habit is and the importance of it. Habit is that action that's required for you to build success in anything that you attempt, anything you achieve at all. So if you were to look at, I know as I use the sport analogies a lot of times, but there's a good point. There's a lot of overlap with professional high-level, world-class athletes. Many of those tools and principles and techniques are familiar to those people because that's the framework and the foundation for them to reach that level of success. These principles and tools don't just apply to one type of endeavor or one sort of industry, or it's a universal thing. These techniques that I'm sharing with you can be applied to anything you can imagine, and they will work. So, especially with those athletes, as I said, they really understand that the success comes from habits. So, if you have a good set of habits in place now, you'll be able to pinpoint back to those habits and see how they've served you well and helped you progress to the point you're at. When I first started on my journey of self-mastery and discovery, it happened because I was at a point in my life that I wasn't happy with. And what led me to that point, once I was mature enough and open enough to take ownership and accept it, was my habits. All the things, even that I might not have realized had become habits, were the things that had carried me. Habits are almost the vehicle, if you will, that's going to drive you to the destination that you're seeking to arrive at. So when I first took stock of where I was at in my life and looked at who I'd become and how did I get here, I remember that feeling. You just like when you're in that mode of complaining and you're frustrated and you're sort of bitching about all the things that are causing issues in your life, and then you have this sort of realization, like an epiphany, that you just sort of dawns on you, and you're like, hang on, this is all my doing. I think that's the first step. That's so powerful. As soon as you have that realization, it allows you to move forward, because it's like with like those groups like self-help with like Alcoholics Anonymous. The first step of those programs is what would you call it? Admitting that you have a problem. and then that's how you grow from there. You have to just sort of acknowledge it to begin with. So I was in a position where I didn't enjoy every day of my life, and getting up, going to meaningless, drudgery and work that just wasn't fulfilling, didn't nourish my soul. And I remember just looking at it and sort of almost like a out of body experience. I step back and take stock and say to myself, okay, this is where I actually am. How did I get here, and why am I here? Why do I feel this way? And it all tied back when I was able to really analyze it and look at it. It was all around the habits and those traits and the behaviors that I had constantly been doing, and some of them unwillingly or unconsciously almost, if you will, or subconsciously, that led me to that point. And once I understood that, I was able to go dissect that and take those habits apart and see, were they serving me well, or were they ineffective for where I would like to go. So after I come to that realization, I was able to take those habits, say, okay, now I no longer want to be in this position. So the first thing I can do to change my position is I have to change what's led me to that position in the first place, and that's those habits. So and I've probably used this quote before, but Einstein is credited with saying, insanity, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. And that's all what habits are. Habits are really those behaviors, those rituals that you constantly do, as I said, willing or unwillingly, that create your reality. Habits are very powerful because they're really the building blocks of the life that you have, or the life that you're chasing after. So I like to look at habits as almost like the way that you program your brain. So habits being the programming, or the software, or the information that you put into your brain, that rewire and come together to serve you in the way that's going to move you in that direction that you're trying to go to. So elevating your life, elevating your status, increasing your financial wealth or your health, whatever it is, everything is circling around habits. It's important to understand they're those building blocks. So as a backstory now, I think I've mentioned this to some of you before, but in the early days, once I had looked at my life and said, okay, I'm not satisfied, probably one of the first things that really helped change and solidify those positive habits in my life was getting my health right. And now the health is one of the four elements of a successful and rich life, where you feel fulfilled and you feel satisfied because you've learned to incorporate habits that build upon those core elements in your life that lead you to mastery and success and fulfillment. So early on, I jumped on the health kick, and I if any of you have ever tried to get yourself healthy and from a position where you're not healthy into like a, not necessarily like an elite level, but a comfortably capable level of fitness, it is hard. It is one of the most challenging and frustrating things you can do physically, because those bad habits that you've been operating in with for so long, that have gotten you into that position where you're not at your peak health, it doesn't just change overnight. You basically, if you're neutral in the middle, and you decide, your habits are reasonable, they're not the best habits to drive you forward, but they're not taking you backwards. They're just sort of, you're okay, you're fairly fit, but you're not, as good as you could be. from that position, that's your starting point. It's much easier to instill the good habits that are going to drive you and move you towards what your goal and ambition is with your fitness journey. Now, the thing to remember is all those bad habits that have especially led me down that path where I was overweight and unhealthy, and I was constantly having pain in my back, joints would ache, and just general inflammation and lethargy, always tired. No matter how much I rested, I was always tired. So those habits that I was having, where when I was driving trucks, and I don't know if any of you are familiar or in that position where you guys do that as well. There's not a lot of good food and healthy food out and about. So when you're on the road and you're delivering somewhere and you stop and your lunch break, the only place that you can get some food might be a petrol station where it's a meat pie and a can of Coke. Like I can remember I was eating when I used to do deliveries around area of Milton, which is basically, for those of you that aren't aware, in Brisbane, in Queensland, Australia, where near the Suncorp Stadium, one of our big sporting stadiums, there was a pizza place, Pizza Miltonio, I think it's called, and I used to go there every day for lunch, and I'd get the personal pan pizza. Like, it's probably, if you're on YouTube, you're sort of looking at what I'm holding my hands up, it's about that size. So I'd eat 2 of those at lunch, and then I'd have a can of cherry Coke, and then I'd have dessert. I had to go and get like a chocolate bar or some candy as well. And I did that every single day. And now I was doing that. I was consciously making those choices, but I wasn't consciously instilling positive habits that were reinforcing good results for me. But nonetheless, those were my habits. And I wasn't even aware. I was just operating in that regard. So every day, that's what I'd eat for lunch. Every single day. Can you imagine, like, I don't need to imagine, but I mean, for you listening, you can imagine, because I know what it did to me. And I got to a point where I'm fairly, like, stocky kind of man anyway. I'm maybe 5'10", and I got to 99 kilos. And that was that turning point where I said, that's enough. This is ridiculous. I don't ever want to get to a point in my life where I can say, because I didn't instill positive habits, that I'm going to cross over into 3 digits for my weight. That was that moment for me where the threshold where I said, that's enough. I can't do this to myself anymore. As I said, I was feeling, back pain every single day. It was just miserable, always tired, ridiculous. It's funny how those habits get a hold of you and they snowball. We spoke in a previous podcast about momentum, and that momentum can serve you well, or it can burden you. And I was in the momentum of the habits that I was living under each day, doing these negative traits and negative behaviors that were piling on and taking me from that neutral starting point that I spoke of to further back in my health journey, running into that very unhealthy territory. So from there, that point, as I said earlier when I started this sort of line of thought, that to go from being back that far, the journey is so difficult, because once you decide to instill those positive habits, it's not that instantly you're starting from ground zero and moving forward. I had to come back to neutral and ground zero to keep going and progress into the level of health that I'm trying to achieve. And it was so challenging. I remember the feeling of, as I said, if any of you have ever jumped on the health kick and tried to improve yourself with that physical health, the first day that you do it, it feels like it's actually damaging to you. You feel so much pain and discomfort. I remember not being able to breathe properly 2 or 3 minutes into the exercise, and feeling like my heart thumping so hard that I was gonna die. I remember I'd start with runs. I'd just run up and down my street, and I'd start with a 1 or 2 kilometer run, and then from there I'd work up to 4 kilometers, and then I got into 10 kilometers, and I just sort of kept building on the habit, the positive habit, and improving and challenging myself to see, you know, how I could improve. And the first time that I run up my street, I remembered thinking, I am so unhealthy. Just realizing the pain that I was going through just off a simple run, and how far behind I'd put myself because of my bad choice in diet and the habits that were, you know, ruling my life. And you know, that's a point that I want to talk to you guys regarding is we need to consciously be mindful of those habits, because if we're not consciously creating those positive habits that serve us well and empower us to move and help us grow and master ourselves, our brains basically taking us on autopilot and doing those bad habits that don't serve us well automatically. We you know, I imagine most of you have probably heard the saying, you know, humans are creatures of habit, and it's 100%. That's the way we're sort of wired. The way that humans operate is to save, you know, cognitive capacity and that mental stress and load. We can't make the same decisions each day and calculate, you know, complex reasoning behind, you know, is this a good choice today? Is this not a good choice today? How do I approach this in this regard? You're wired to basically, if you've made a decision, it's very easy for you to get in that habit, which is why they call it that, because it becomes an automated thing where you just get stuck in a habit of you know, whatever you're doing easily becomes a habit. So you don't have to constantly go through life trying to assess every decision you make just to make it, because that would be overwhelming and mentally daunting. So I think it's really crucial to understand that being creatures of habit, and that's how you know, you can quite easily get off track, because if you just allow, you know, your habits to continue as they are, they're still your habits, whether you want to label a habit or not, or even realize that the things that you're repeating on a daily basis are your habits. So it's vital to consciously decide and take that action and let that drive you forward, because you're making that decision to instill positive habits into your everyday routine. What I think is a really, really nice reminder in that regard too is that have you ever tried to break a bad habit, right? Let's say if you're a smoker, right, and it's part of the addiction is the chemical addiction, and another piece of the addiction is the habit. You know, I know a lot of, you know, as I've mentioned in the past, I was a chef, and so many chefs that I work with would smoke and drink. You know, there was just, you know, hustle bustle, busy lifestyle, like, you know, non-stop, high energy, and that was just people like smoke to calm their nerves. It was intense, and part of the habit is the behavior itself, not just the addiction to the chemicals, but the addiction to the behavior, your habit. So, you know, it's easy to you know, get in that routine, like, you know, at say 10:30 after, you know, you've run your breakfast shift in the morning. You know, your routine is you go outside and have your break and you have a cigarette and you talk to, you know, your other colleagues and co-chefs, and then that becomes a habit. And it's what's the word I'm looking for? It keeps reinforcing that habit, because the more that you do it, the longer it occurs. It solidifies that you've consciously chosen that, and then your brain goes, okay, well, I don't need to think about that. I don't need to take any of my processing power to make this decision. We just know at 10:30 that's what we do. We go outside and have a cigarette. If you've ever tried to break that, you know, like all of us at some point have picked up on it and said, this is something we don't want to continue. This is a habit that's not serving me well. I want to quit. When you try that, it's one of the most challenging things I feel that you can go through, because it's almost like you're going against what your brain is comfortable with. So you're in essence shocking your system to sort of shake things up, and your brain doesn't want to do that. So your brain and your body will fight against it to hold on to those habits because it's easier and it serves it to not have to overcomplicate and rethink through those decisions each and every day, as I said. So when you're trying to break a habit, you get that feeling like, I don't know if you ever get that, like sweats, your palms get sweaty, you get nervous, you get hot flushes, and you can feel the physical reaction of you trying to avoid it, like, or making excuses, like, I gotta go to the gym, I can't, tonight, I've got a bit of back pain, I'm too tired. It's one of the most challenging things to create those new positive habits that serve you well, but it is one of the most rewarding things as well, because once the beauty in, the other side of the coin, the opposite of the equation is, as hard as it is for you to break a negative habit, once you instill and affirm those positive habits in your life, it's equally as hard to break those positive habits and fall out of that routine once you have instilled that and you've got that as your sort of, as I said, that brain programming instilled that, okay, now this is what we do. Okay, we don't smoke anymore. We no longer drink. Oh, we exercise every day. Okay, I'm going for a 10K run. That's normal. That's what I do. That's how I operate. So I think it's really beneficial to remember that, like as long as you can push through those negative habits and get past that point where you're reprogramming and instilling those positive traits that are beneficial to you, those habits that are serving you well, once they solidify, then they're not as easy to shift. And then you don't really need to consider shifting them because they're actually serving you well. They're not a burden or a hindrance to your journey and progress, as you grow. So like another example, like as I was saying with my health journey, when I got from 99 kilos and I made a commitment to myself. So the beginning commitment has to start with the habit of your making that choice mentally and committing 100% all in, deciding, okay, Cortez on the shore of the new world, burn the boats. There's no way back. We gotta go. We've made the choice. Let's get it. So when I made that decision, and I was going through like every night wanting to make excuses. I don't want to exercise. Like I feel like I'm going to vomit. My heart feels like it's coming out of my throat. Like it's throbbing through my chest. I can't cope. This feels worse than being unhealthy. And that's what it feels like. That pain from actually doing something that's benefiting your body. And I said to myself, I'm going to do this for 60 days straight, because if I miss a day and then I go, oh, well, then I've shown myself, oh, okay, I can make excuses. It's not so bad. I miss one day. Then the next thing I know, I've missed 2 days. And then, 2 days out of 60 isn't bad. And before I know it, I've done 30 days exercise and I've missed 30. And I haven't got the full benefit of shifting the habits and my mental programming to serve me well and solidify it so that it's no longer easy for me to fall out of that good habit. Because until you solidify that and really lock that in, that this is now the way you operate, it's very easy to fall back into those old patterns because you've instilled them over such a long period of time. Like if you think about someone that hasn't really looked after their health, they may be like 20 years deep that they've been neglecting their body and their health. That's not something that you can shift those habits or patterns overnight. That's taken 20 years for you to get to a certain point. And this is an extreme example, but it illustrates my point. So when you've solidified those positive habits, the key is repetition. So I don't only want to tell you that you need to form positive habits. I want to give you the tools and how to do that as well. And the key for you and me and everyone listening is repetition is what is going to form those positive habits, and as I said, solidify them, that they become your new operating system and the way that you travel through life. So if you, there's been various studies on this, and I'm not sure which is the most accurate or up to date, but I've heard anything ranging from if you repeat something 17 times that it becomes habit. And then I've heard other extremes of being it takes 66 days to form a habit. So really you've got to give yourself the right tools and the right opportunities for those habits to form. So you can't do something for, like, let's say the extreme case is right, that it's 66 days to form a habit. You can't do a workout. Let's say you do a workout every day for 3 weeks, right? 21 days. That's an amazing effort, and that's incredible. Anyone that can push from not doing anything and get to that point, that's incredible. But you got to remember, you can't stop there. You don't want to sell yourself short and limit yourself because you're so close. You know, if you stop at that 21 days, it's very easy to sort of fall back into those ways, even though you've done that amazing work. But you're that far. You got to keep going. You can't stop, because if you stop, you're starting from zero again. This is why the repetition is so important. You have to stick to your guns. You have to, commit. As I said, go all in on it, because that repetition is you reprogramming your brain with the positive habits that'll shift and change your life forever. I promise you. Now, like as an example, for now, I've been going to gym and exercising religiously for maybe, I'd say 4 years, probably 4 years, like really seriously dialing it in. And now it's become the norm. Like, I feel weird if I don't do a workout. And it's become, and there's times, don't get me wrong, like, I'm human. Now, I don't work out, 6 days a week, every single week. Most weeks it's 4 to 6 days a week, depending on what's going on in my life. But the key is, when I started, I did the 60 days straight, and probably even longer than that. But the initial program I did was a 60-day program, and I fought through all the pain and the suffering and just the anxiety around doing that physical work to change my life, and then it instilled the new habit. So now it's become, as I said, 4 years in, if I miss a day, I don't sort of fall back into my old ways. And it's not to say that you can't fall back in your own ways. You don't, take it for granted either. But now, as I said, it feels odd if I don't do a workout. And I found, like, if periods where I've been traveling, if I don't do a workout for 3 days in a row, my body sort of gets angry and sort of like, hey, something's wrong, what are we doing, and gets agitated, even to the point where if I feel like super exhausted and tired and just couldn't be bothered for a workout, then I tell myself, no, this is the time you have to challenge yourself and push through and fight for it. Then when I do that workout, I feel amazing afterward. It's like my body goes, yes, that's what I was looking for. That's what I needed. Those endorphins, that oxygen flow around my body, good circulation, good airflow, just stressing my muscles, challenging myself, and my body feels better for it. It's actually become such a positive habit that now it's hard to break that habit. As I said, with once you instill that positive habit, it becomes as locked in as some of the negative habits you had in the past. And what makes it easy in that regard too is, if as I said, creatures of habit. Humans are creatures of habit, right? So if you know the parameters and the framework that we operate in and how we're wired and what we respond best to, it's very easy for you to take that knowledge and apply the approach that serves you well, because you're working within the constraints of how we are designed to operate. So if you like, it's super simple, right? It's just, the right thing to do. You understand how it works, so you do that thing. It's super simple. It's very easy. It's kind of like you want to watch television. You have to turn the TV on. That the TV requires a button to be pressed, and it turns itself on. Same thing, same principle. You know how to operate. You know what's going to serve us well. The habits that are positive, that are going to benefit our lives. And how do we instill those habits? Through repetition. It's that simple. That's what I really wanted to share with you guys today. Is that's the key. The power of habits that'll serve your life well is you take those negative habits that you might not be aware of that you're doing. You take the opposite approach, being the positive habit, and then you repeat that. The repetition reinforces and solidifies that habit that changes your life forever. Now, I promise you, these are little simple things, but if you can learn to take these on board and instill them and use them in your everyday life, you'll see exceptional growth and phenomenal change in a short amount of time possible. And you're just using the health example again. I went from 99 kilos down to 84 kilos. That's in that sort of, I think that was in the 60 days, huge. And then from there, worked on changing and learning what was working well for me, and then got into resistance training and weightlifting, and got back up to sort of 92, 93 kilos, and this time being muscle mass instead of being fat. It's a journey, you got to love it. And, if you really think about what other choice do you have? Why do you want to operate with habits that are going to make your life difficult and miserable? As hard as it is to break those habits, I challenge you to ask yourself, what's harder? Is it going through life with those habits that make each day challenging and frustrating and not being in control and empowered to be where you want to be in your life? Or doing the things that are going to serve you well, that are uncomfortable for, between 17 and 66 days? 66 days is nothing. You imagine how quick your life can change. 2 months, 3 months. And you'll see phenomenal change and growth, I promise you. So I want that to stick with you guys. Take those habits that don't serve you well, shift them into a positive habit, do the opposite, and repetition. Day in, day out. Stick through it, because I promise you at the end, it's worth it and you deserve it. Remember, we talk about this all the time. Who could you become? This is what it's all about. So don't forget, as I said at the start of the podcast, please jump onto Facebook, look for the Master Pupils group, and click sign up. Be in there, join. It's a free group. It's for us to all share and grow together and be part of that community, because I know for me, when I started my journey, it was very difficult to find like-minded people and where they congregate and where they are and how to connect with them. So that's why I've got this group for us all to be a part of and share and learn together. So thank you again for being here with me. I love each and every one of you. I appreciate that you guys are on this journey with me, and we're going to have a lot of fun as we keep growing and go forward together. Okay, this is Wade Vincent, Forever Better Academy, and I will speak to you again next Friday. Have a lovely weekend. Thanks, guys. Bye.